Or Jessica.
Yeah, Jessica, is it worth changing from an SMSF to a retail fund once you've already retired? For example, there was a business originally which is why there was a SMSF, and now there isn't. How hard is it to change?
Yeah, that's probably a good flashpoint. Everything that you can get with the self-managed super fund, the 90% of the things, except, maybe some property or real crazy speculative stuff, you can get on a retail platform. So go to an advisor. I've wound up a heap of super funds for people over the years. It's not hard. It's a bit annoying. But, if you're going to retire, you want probably less paperwork and less drama, I would think. So that would be and that's interesting, John, because the need was there when you wanted a commercial property.
Yeah.
Things were lean in the business in our own name, but there was meat in the super fund. Well, let's just do it there. We'll rent it off the super fund, and it's got to be market rates. You can't underpay or overpay, so you've got to watch that.
But you'd also look at that.
But if the need was there, so we went to self-managed super fund. Need's gone now, so in theory, we don't need to self-manage.
No, but is it still a good investment? Do we have to upset the apple cart? Like, as in, business is no longer there, but can we rent that out, and is it still a viable asset and investment?
Well, I think you run into the liquidity thing. That could be all they've got, and they need to retire, so it has to be sold because they can't live off the rent.
And it draw down some of the
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, once you get into your pension phase, there's minimum drawdowns required from the super fund. So it's all well and good to have the property, but if you retire and you've got to pull 5, 6, 7% a year and it's not coming from rent, you've screwed. You've got no liquidity. You've got to sell.
Is that what is the minimums?
5, yeah. 5%, it starts at 5. Yeah.
Of the total balance. So how hard is it to change? Not really.
No, it's not hard.
Vanessa.
How to best structure an investment strategy in a self-managed super fund. We just set ours up and have invested in one property so far. Now looking at what we should diversify and split between high growth and defensive. Yeah, so part of the responsibilities of the trustee is to ensure that the fund has an investment strategy. So it's a document that says this is the fund, this is how we're investing on behalf of members. It will have cash, 0 to 60% at all time. Australian shares, 0 to 60%. International shares, 0 to whatever. So this is the band. I did my own. It's so funny. I did my own strategy. Sent it in the first audit. They didn't use it. They plugged in some template or it was a mistake or whatever, and it was pretty much like just all for property. I'm like, you people. So
you need
what you've got to look at. The answer isn't just property to everything. Like, share your experience. Why don't you have a self-managed super fund, John, and why don't you own property in it? Because you're the property guy.
Well,
shouldn't you get property everywhere?
There's a couple of things. First one is being a business owner. I think I shared this in the last episode. Being a business owner, my superannuation contributions were low for a period of time, and not only me but my wife. So the balance wasn't adequate to say let's go and buy a $600,000-$700,000 property. So if the balance isn't high enough and you can't buy an asset that's worthy, then why would you do it is probably the first thing of that. And then the second one that always was putting me off was the fact that, the interest rates are high, the restrictions are there, you cannot do a lot of things that you can do in your personal name. So why wouldn't we just continue to build it in our personal and let superannuation do its thing? But from a diversification point of view, I've got to have some superannuation or I've got to have some investment in some other asset classes because we're so highly geared into property in our personal.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. So to Vanessa, I would hope potentially, so in my situation, I've got the property, there's a little mortgage in there, I've got lots of cash in there, and my contributions now go into, and I've shared this before, the Life Sherpa Invest has a portfolio. It's owned by the super fund, and that's where I put my contributions. Now, I need to make sure, again, this is just another layer of crap you have to deal with. I've got to pay my tax quarterly, the contributions tax. Like it's just the accountant or the auditor may need to do the quarterly books and all that. It's just, so I would hope that if you are buying that property, Vanessa, that your SG contributions don't just get sucked up into paying the difference between rent and the mortgage repayments.
Yeah, that's right. You really do need to know your running costs in any property you buy, but more so in your super, because it can whittle away pretty quick. But also for Vanessa, there is a percentage that we need to keep in cash anyway.
Well, as a responsibility, as a trustee, you need to make sure there's liquidity in the fund.
Is it 10% minimum?
No, there's no hard and fast rule. It was just some of the lenders did that, like I said before. On settlement, they require a 10% liquidity.
Yeah.
But it'd be a good rule of thumb.
But didn't they have that previously? I thought there was a minimum.
I don't think it's mandated. No. But
okay.
But what you need to do, so for example, like we shared in the last video and the episode just before this, 836, not 836b, my insurance that was set up a million years ago is paid by super. So every year I do a rollover from my self-managed super fund into that insurance policy.
Yeah, okay.
So you need a few grand a year for your insurance.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Glen here. Thank you so much for watching today's video. You made it to the end. Can I ask a favor? Can you hit that like button and maybe hit subscribe if you want to get notified when we release further videos just like this one, whether you watch the Money, Money, Money podcast or Retire Right. And remember, if you want to learn more about investing, I've got an investing book, The Quick Start Guide to Investing, and there's a link in the description to get your hands on a copy. Thank you so much. Bye.